Dan Dowdy, host of the Built for the Trades podcast, where we help trades, men and women out there grow through leadership development. This is my recap episode with Dan Clapper from Interplay Learning. So if you have not listened to the interview, I encourage you to pause here and go to the previous episode and listen to the interview, where the cool thing about Interplay Learning is their mission is to better career, better lives for skilled trades. And they do it in a very innovative way that will help take your leadership and your business to the next level. In today's podcast, I'm going to be sharing some key points on the leadership principle that we live by here at Built for the Trades, is serving over selling. I'm going to give you a few key takeaways today, not only explaining what the difference is, but how you can apply serving over selling to your life. If you are enjoying this Built for Trades podcast, I just want to remind you, our goal is to grow this organically. And in doing so, please subscribe and share this with somebody else in the trades that you feel like could get value from this podcast. All right, so let's dive in. Let's talk about when I was listening back to the recap with Dan Clapper, one of the main points that stood out was serving over selling in leadership. And I wanted to walk you through what that looks like, why it's important, and give you a few steps to really applying serving over selling when it comes to leadership. So think about that, serving over selling. When I'm standing in front of my audience and I say, hey, one of our values here is serving over selling, a lot of people kind of shut me off. They say, oh, well, Dan, like I want more sales. Like I want to bring in more revenue for my business. And I have to slow down and pump the brakes and say, I want the same thing for you. My last 20 plus years in the trades, I have been successful in developing multiple technicians that earn over $1 million a year in revenue in residential plumbing sales. So I too am a fan of sales. I am. But I'm also, but the way I like to frame it is serving over selling. And so let me take you through the difference in serving versus selling. So if I'm serving somebody, I'm truly focused on the person I'm with, right? I'm not distracted, giving them my full attention. I am asking questions and being curious. And as I'm getting the answers, I'm documenting and taking notes. And then at that point, I go back and I provide options that's going to help solve one of that person's needs, right? One of their wants, something that they're specifically telling me. The difference, if I'm just selling somebody, I am distracted. I'm not asking questions or listening. I'm probably not asking questions at all. I'm just providing that customer or that person I'm in front of options of things that I want to sell them because I'm comfortable selling those options. So it's more about me and less about the customer or the person that I'm in front of. Here at Built for the Trades, we teach about the 4 stages of leadership. Stage 1 is position. We believe that in order to lead people well, you must first put things in writing of what you expect of that person. Set clear expectations, right? And do it with a positive mindset. So think about that. In stage 1 of leadership, you could be standing in front of a customer. You could be standing in front of a team member or potential team member. But think about how you're doing that. How are you setting clear expectations for what it is that you're wanting to communicate to that person? Are you doing it in writing? Are you not doing it at all? Think about that. That's one challenge that you could take away from this podcast to apply, is the power of setting clear expectations. If there's any kind of gray area, I encourage you, take the time to set those clear expectations. Stage 2 of leadership that we talk about here is building the relationship. Think about that when it comes to serving over selling, right? If you're serving somebody, you're truly giving them your full attention. You're taking the time to get to know them. So you're building the relationship. Now, you may be wondering, how do you build a relationship? Well, really what it is stop talking about yourself and start asking about questions about the person that you're engaging. Truly be interested in that person. Start to ask those questions. Start to learn about that person. Start to learn their needs, their wants, their concerns, and then show them the appreciation, the respect by taking some notes, writing it down. It's so powerful when you do that. It helps go to the next level, and people feel respected. They feel appreciated when you're doing those things. So relationship building is a bunch of different things. But the first and foremost, it's giving somebody your undivided attention and being curious about them. Stop talking about yourself. Stage 3 of leadership is production. That's where you show people that here I am and I'm going to lead by example, right? You're showing people what it looks like to win. So when it comes to serving over selling and you're building that relationship, now here's the time to educate, right? Here's the time to talk a little bit about what you know, built around what it is that that person has, their needs, wants, concerns, right? Here's the time to show your education. Start to talk about options. Start to educate the person. And then once you do that, stage 4 is what we call reproduction. That's the 4th stage of leadership. And once you go through the first 3 stages, people will start to open up and start to hear you because you first served them before ever trying to sell that person. And so there's a big difference between introducing yourself, skipping stage 2 and stage 3, and jumping straight into that stage 4 of reproduction and trying to sell something to somebody. I was at lunch one time with my truck salesman at my, he was selling trucks to me in my plumbing company. And I was just curious, I asked the question, hey, Rick, what's one thing that you know that you could teach me? One thing that he's really good at sales in his space. What's one thing that you know that you could teach me? And he said, you know what, Dan, it's a great question. Nobody's really ever asked me that. But he said, love the one that you are with. And I started thinking about that. Like, what? That's Rick. Come on, dude. That's weird. That doesn't make any sense. He says, no, let me tell you more. He says, when you are engaging with somebody, whether it's picking up a phone call or it is sitting down at lunch like we were doing or standing face to face with somebody, there should be nothing more important in the world than that engagement right there. And that has stuck with me from that day. And I started thinking about how that applies to leadership. All right. So here's a quick example, something that we deal with every day, right? And I say we, I'm putting everybody in the same bucket, but this could be, it's really just day-to-day interactions with people. I'm sitting here in my office. Somebody walks into my office and says, hey, Dan, you got a minute? And I look up from my computer as I'm sending an email and I say, yeah, go ahead. And I keep typing my email and that person's telling me something, right? And I'm going, yep, okay, all right, thanks, bye. I did not serve that person. I did not show that person my full attention. And there's a really good chance that I didn't even hear what that person had to say, right? So if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably guilty of the same thing. And so it takes a really concerted effort to set the expectations. So let's go back to that again. Okay. I'm typing an email on my computer in my office. Somebody comes in and says, hey, Dan, you got a minute? And I'm typing a really important email, right? I look up and I say, hey, Sam, yeah. Well, before you come in, just tell me what it is that you need from me. And he just gives me a quick overview. Hey, I need to ask you a question about this customer. And I say, all right, Sam, I want to give you my full undivided attention so we can talk about this. Can I come back and get you in 5 minutes once I send this email? So that way I can give you my full undivided attention and we can talk about this. And Sam will either say yes or no, and then we'll go about our way, right? But I was serving Sam by setting the expectations that, hey, look, what you have is important. And yes, I do want to give you my full undivided attention, but I need to finish my thoughts here, send this off, and I'm going to come back to you. Or another example could be the same thing. I'm typing an email, right? Sam comes in, hey, you got a minute? Yeah, give me a quick overview of what you want to talk about. Okay, cool. All right, Sam, that's really important. So let me stop what I'm doing here. Let me turn and face you. Come on in. Let's engage in this conversation. And then I'm going to go back to what it is I'm working on. See, that's serving over selling. That's showing somebody the full undivided attention. That's stage 1 of leadership. I set the expectations. I'm showing Sam that, yes, he is important. I do want to engage in that conversation. And that's just a quick example of an interaction with a fellow team member. It could be the same thing if I'm answering phones for a living, right? Am I picking up my phone and doing something else while I'm talking to a customer, right? That is most of the time I'm not engaged in the conversation, so I'm saying things like, okay, yeah. And the customer can feel that I'm doing something else in the background, right? We've all had that kind of conversation with somebody where you hear the typing in the background or you hear something going on and you're just kind of like secondary noise and they're not really engaging with you. You're just kind of there. Like, what do you feel when that happens, right? You feel unappreciated, right? You feel like, oh, well, if you guys know what's going on, let's talk at a different time. So that's the challenge today. When you think about serving over selling, I want you to think about engaging with people, stopping what you're doing, giving them your undivided attention. And if you don't have that to give, don't engage at that time. Reset the expectation for a future time that you can give somebody your undivided attention. A great quote here that I had jotted down was it's from Brian Tracy. Approach each customer with the idea of helping him or her solve a problem or achieve a goal, not of selling a product or a service. Think about that as you're listening to this podcast. Approach each customer with the idea of helping him or her solve a problem or achieve a goal. I could reframe that. Approach each team member with the idea of helping him or her solve a problem or achieve a goal, not of selling a product or service, right? Approach each person you come in contact with, each person that you fully engage with the idea of helping him or her solve a problem or achieve a goal. So I'm going to recap this again, and I want to tell one more story before I end this podcast, but Dan Clapper, he was a great interview over Interplay Learning. If you're looking to bridge the gap, they take something that could take months or years to train up your technicians. And by using their program, their virtual reality program, to help supplement what you're already doing, you can cut that down from months or years to weeks, because there's always going to be downtime that they can be working on the virtual reality and learning more about their trade, more knowledge, more skills, all those great things. So here's a couple key points, takeaways from what I'm talking about when it comes to serving over selling. First thing is give the person you're engaging with your undivided attention, right? Set that expectation up front. And if you can't give your undivided attention, you need to set the expectation to move the conversation to a different time when you can, right? That's the first step in serving somebody else. Second step, right? Be curious, ask questions. That builds the relationship. Don't just talk about yourself. Nobody wants to hear all about yourself. Start to ask questions about the person that you're engaging with. That's step 2. Step 3, take notes. When you start to take notes, that person feels appreciated. They feel respected, right? So you're adding the value, you're serving before you ask for anything in return. Those 3 steps will go a long ways. And then step 4 is providing the information, the product or service based around their needs, wants, and concerns, not around what you want to sell them. So those four key points will help you in your sales. They will help you in your leadership. They will help you in your friendships. They'll help you in your marriage. They'll help you anywhere in your life. So I hope you enjoyed that. One more thing I want to talk about before I end this podcast. This is something else that in the day and age where our cell phones are always pulling at our attention, right? They're always they're saying, hey, Dan, pick me up and look at me. Hey, I got this, ding, 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 all these different things. If you are struggling with what I'm talking about in today's podcast, here's another key secret that you can do. You can go to your smartphone, you can open up your settings, and you can go to your notifications. And I encourage you, turn off all notifications that you don't need to see at the moment that it's pushing through to your phone. Notifications on your phone is the biggest distractor from serving people. It's the biggest distractor from engaging in conversation. It's the biggest factor from leading people, because you got to remember, leadership is influence. And you're either influencing people in the right direction or you're influencing people in the wrong direction. But the best way to influence is to work your way through those four stages, is to show them the attention, right? Setting the expectations in writing. Stage two, building the relationship. Stage three, showing them what it looks like to lead and engage, and sharing some of your knowledge that they're wanting to get from you. And then stage four is the reproduction stage. That's when they're going to be open and willing to accept what it is that you're sharing with them, because it's an act of reciprocation. You first served them, you first showed them value. Now they're willing to hear, now they're willing to accept. Well, today, my hope is that you enjoyed this podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share this with a friend, and we would love to see a review. Reviews help guide all of our conversations moving forward. And I just want y'all to remember out there, like, leadership is a daily journey. So what I'm sharing with you right now, I wake up every day to get better at it. And guess what? I wake up some days and I fail at this. So I wake up the next day, I learn, I get better, I engage with people, and I focus on serving over selling. Hope you have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you next time.